This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac, 28 minutes of stories about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha comes to you from Radio Western in London, Ontario, Canada. It is heard on 13 university and community radio stations in 8 provinces, from Newfoundland to British Columbia. Welcome to an episode first presented in January 2018. Natalie Simotyuk, Natalka Simotyuk, is 32. She has a burning desire to write and to sing and to record her songs. Terry McManus, well, he's older. The songwriter, singer, performer followed a similar dream and succeeded in much of what he has set out to do. Today on Nasha Kasha from Toronto and London, Ontario, we'll hear about the chase, the passion to succeed in the music industry, and what each of them now knows. But first, here's Natalie Simotyuk and her song, I Gotta Know.
I got an old soul. I've seen it all before and then some. You got a good act, especially when I'm feeling lonesome. I got a love that will burn you to ashes. Be careful now. Give me your edges rough and all of you. Yeah, I want it straight up. Tell me now. Up with the storm that's brewing, because if not then, who do you think you're fooling? You should let me know if you're ready. You ready now? Give me your edges rough and all of you. Yeah, I want it straight up. Tell me now.
Only coach right now. They're not ready for the club. They're setting it up. Okay? Coach only. Watch out for that.
I met Natalie inside Union Station in Toronto. I was in between trains on my way to Montreal. She had booked time off from work. We spoke inside the Via Rail Lounge.
So I was born in Edmonton, Alberta. I come from some wonderful parents, Ndri and Hanya Simotyuk, a wonderful family, grew up in Edmonton, and then went down to Los Angeles to do my undergrad.
You conveniently forgot the fact that you have a brother.
I also do have a brother. He'll kill me if I don't mention him. No, I do have a brother. He's Mirko Simotyuk, and he's in New York right now. And he's a lawyer, and he's wonderful.
Okay, tell me about your younger years. Plast, sum...
Oh yeah, the whole enchilada, like plast, kursi.
Ти закінчила курси українознавства?
Безперечно. Так.
So what was the best thing about living in Edmonton?
I think honestly because it's so cold, you have to have a very hardy disposition in order to live there. You learn to appreciate the small things. And so when you get together with a group of people, there, you really do appreciate who you're around. And their hearts are so good. Like, it's such a wonderful place to grow up. I can't say enough.
You have a powerful voice. I mean, most people...
Thank you.
When did you know that you had this strong voice and one that could stay in key?
It was actually Tato. Tato and I did an album when I was like 11 because I got my love of music from him. I mean, also from my mama, but from him, he used to do his own songwriting. He used to translate a lot of songs from Ukrainian into English in order for me to sing them. So he and I worked on a project when I was probably about 11. But granted, like back then, I don't think I understood. But it was only after I went to grad school for theater theater and I did a lot of voice training that I started to recognize, like, oh no, I've got somewhat of an instrument here, and now I just have to have the courage to really go for it and try it out.
So this project that you referred to, was it a song, an album, a CD? It wasn't a CD in those days, a tape of some kind?
It was an album. Yeah, it was like, I think 11 songs, and no one will ever find this. My Tata's probably got the only copy, but it was 11 songs of just his favorite tunes that he wanted me to sing because he loved my voice. And so we got together with this producer in Edmonton, and it was like some guy's basement, and that we just recorded it and worked on it.
Okay, this isn't here. I've translated a song. Here I'm going to pull out my tape recorder.
Yeah.
A producer?
Yeah, he was a producer. He was able to record everything and had all the equipment and that sort of.
And how old were you?
10 or 11. I was young. Too young to understand the magnitude of what really goes into a project like that. And I think that's kind of why I got scared away from it, because I knew I was tapping into something, but I don't think I was ready to really go there. And so it took me like another 10 years to come back to it.
Did your father and mom, did they envisage this part of you becoming the professional part of you?
No. I mean, I think, they're good Ukrainian parents, right? Like, they are dreamers, and they have enormous talent in these areas as well, like whether it's music, film, or writing, or any of that. But I think your fear is for your kids, especially to go into the arts, because it's so unstable, or sometimes, it's not very, and it's not very common. Like, it's not the common path you choose. I always tell my mom, like, I wish I could have been happy being an accountant. I really, truly do, because it would have made everyone's life easier. And my tata will say this to me. He recognizes that there's something inside me that's calling me to this. And I've tried to actually, like, get away from this and work in the professional world, and I have developed a career in that respect. But something always brings me back. Yeah.
You may not have been a happy accountant, but if you keep going and you're a success, you'll make your accountant happy.
That's very true. I hope to make him a very happy person one day.
Or her.
Or her. Yes, equal opportunity.
How does the Ukrainian inform that passion?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this about my family, but we actually have a connection to Solomia Krushenitska, who was an opera singer in the turn of the century. And so I always say that I got my pipes from her. So we come from a musical family, or at least one that really had a sincere appreciation for the arts.
Solomia Krushenitska was the original Madama Butterfly.
Yeah. Because Puccini actually put it up in, I think, Milan originally, and it was a total bomb. Like, he got booed off the stage. I don't think they even finished the show. And so he was devastated and never wanted to put it up again. But then a friend of his came to him and said, you need to rework the show and, like, make these changes here and there. But the only thing that's going to make the show work is this singer, Solomia Krushenitska. She's the only one who's got the voice that's going to do this part justice.
She was that well known in Italy at the time?
She was, yeah. Oh, she was world renowned. Like, she sang for the Tsar. There's actually a great story, because this is where I also think I get, like, I have an activist in me as well. I'm very into social justice and equality, especially with the conversations that are going on with equity and women in the workforce. I think I get my inner feminist from Solomia Krushenitska, because the story is she went to perform for the Tsar in the palace in Russia, and at that time, it's the turn of the century, like, tension existed, and, the expectation was that she was going to come either sing an opera song or, a Russian song or something along those lines. And she went in and sang a Ukrainian folk song, which was, could have been her head. It really could have.
It was frowned upon.
It was sincerely frowned upon. But the Tsar was so enamored with her performance, he gave her this beautiful ring, which we still have to this day, as a thank you. And so I think that's the extraordinary thing about art, is it transcends all, racial tensions, all lines, all borders. If the art is truly sincere enough and comes from a genuine enough place, everyone can relate to it. My babas, even my mother and my aunts, they are strong Ukrainian women. So when people would say things like, oh, you can't do that on your own, or, you might need a man's help in order to do that, which people have said to me, I never believed it, because I would go and say, look at what my baba has accomplished. This was a woman who came to Canada with $7 in her pocket, and the shoes on her feet, didn't speak a word of English, was 95% deaf, and created a life for herself and survived and thrived. So if she can do that, yeah, my world, I can do anything that I set my mind to.
Well, tell me about a time in your life when people were telling you you can't do something or you won't be able to do it for whatever reason, and that kind of inner strength.
I don't look like a typical star, let's put it that way. I work very much in the film and theater world. I've worked in casting. I work for TIFF, for the Rising Stars program. So I very much know what is the typical idea of what a star, whatever that shape or form is. And so, I've had the line tell me well, you don't look like that, so maybe you should put your time elsewhere. It doesn't matter if I was talented in it. It doesn't matter if I had a capacity to do the work or, the drive to achieve in that area. It's because I didn't look that way. I didn't fit that certain kind of archetype, whatever that is. That people told me that I should just try something else, or don't put too much time and effort in that, because you're probably not going to get the result that you want. I can always recognize, because everybody has their own taste and everything, right? So what I do may not be everyone's jam, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't fight for my own representation or visibility within this community. It's people like me who don't fit the traditional mold of what is acceptable, exciting, sexy, whatever, like I was saying before, are now, now the conversation is changing, that it doesn't matter what you look like. It's what you can bring to the table. It's what you have to say. It's what you want to put out into the world. And there's now, I think, a bigger container for a reception of all that.
What was going through your head when you wrote the song, I Gotta Know?
Basically, it came from this interaction that I had with this guy who I was hanging out with, and I was interested in him, and I could tell he was someone interested in me, but he just kept taking too long. Because I am a strong personality and I know what I want, I have to find someone who's got the same amount of courage that I do in a relationship. If you don't have the courage to search out your own feelings and see where you're at, then this probably isn't going to work.
There's a bit of pain in that song.
Oh, yeah. Because ultimately, I think it all comes down to, fear or not feeling worthy. But what was, I think, so extraordinary about that song is the moment from placing that, that kind of blame on myself, saying why isn't he into me, to going no, I'm here, and I'm here if you're ready for it. But if you're not ready for it, that's on you.
Yeah, tell me now.
Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM in London, Ontario, Canada. We're also heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, and on 101.7 CIVL FM in Abbotsford, British Columbia. The song I Gotta Know was co-written by Natalie Samotiak, David Rancor, and Antoine Rochette. It was recorded at Lost Boys Productions in Montreal. You can find I Gotta Know on iTunes. In our first segment, you also heard the original recording of Solomea Krušelnicka singing Un bel di vedremo from Madama Butterfly by Giacomo Puccini. It's from the album The Complete Solomea Krušelnicka, and it's available on Marston Records.
Up in the morning I look out, it's raining, it always is. Seems that the rain has got no place else to fall. Trying to figure out something to do on a day like this. But I've got no place to go and there's no one to call. No one at all. Walk for a while, well it's so hard to smile in the pouring rain. Feet are wet and my body's chilled to the bone. There's not much to do in a town so brand new, no one knows my name. But I'd rather be lonely in crowds than lonely at home. Lonely at home.
How are you? Well, good to see you. Come on in.
Yeah, I'm Terry McManus, London, Ontario. My dad's from New Brunswick, and my mother's from Winnipeg. They met at Queen's University. They dated while at Queen's, and then my dad went off to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and my mother decided she wanted to go to New York City, and so she went to work in New York City at Bellevue. They didn't see each other for several years. My mother moved back to Winnipeg.
Now, Bellevue's a hospital.
Hospital in New York City.
Was she a doctor or a nurse?
Nurse. She was a nurse there. She did that for a couple of years. Then she moved back to Winnipeg. One day she got a telegram from my dad asking her to marry him. And so she said yes.
There's a song in that. A telegram and a proposal.
There definitely is a song.
Oh, hang on. We're on university radio. What's a telegram?
Yeah, what's a telegram? Yeah. They used to send pieces of paper, kind of rush. She liked him. They got married, and he went off to war. He was a surgeon for the Canadian Army in the field hospitals up through Belgium and Holland. They ended up in Alabama, and that's actually where I started my music career. I went off to college in Nebraska. Once I had finished school, and I use that term generously because basically I spent all my time touring with a band, and so I couldn't continue in school.
So you were finished with school.
That's right, and school was finished with me, more so.
Cotton rain, constant shower, brand new leaves and growing flowers. Now I'm told it's the hour.
And I went back to live with my parents in Maryland, in Bethesda, Maryland. That's where my dad was working at the time. And I started working as a computer operator. And what I would do was I would save up my money, and then once a month I'd take a sick day, and I'd fly up to New York. I'd walk the pavements, of New York, pounding on doors, playing my songs. And I had the chance in Bethesda to go to a basement recording studio to do my demos. And this basement recording studio was called Bias Recording Studio. And basically, it was a guy with a 2-track, and some reverb and whatnot. But he was very good at what he did. But there I met a guy named George Daly, who became my first producer, produced my first record.
Tell me about Sun Shower, that first hit that you just referred to.
Yeah, I wrote that one actually in Bethesda, and it was kind of a very slow ballad, like for Donovan was my hero at that point. It was definitely the 60s influence. I moved up to Canada. You need a job. I went to work for a recording studio, first for free. This was in Toronto. The fellow who had the recording studio ended up working for the Ontario Arts Council. He was an engineer. He got the idea together to put a recording studio and send it all around Ontario, because at that point there were no recording studios around. So we went off to these different places. I put together a series of regional concerts that ended in one final big concert of the best at Ontario Place, the very first concert in Ontario Place, and I was the producer for it. I met a girl in Vancouver on a promotional tour, and I ended up moving out there and living there for a year and a half. And it was some of the most creative, days that I've had. Basically, I stayed home. She went off to work. I stayed home and wrote songs about her. And it was a fantastic exercise in building up my songwriting chops.
And her name was?
Carolyn.
I should have known better than to fall in love. You should have warned me not to try it. But now it's done, and you're the one I'm thinking of. You're the only girl who satisfies. If you say yes today, I'll see you tomorrow. It doesn't matter if it's rain or shine, 'cause when I come to you, I leave all my sorrow behind.
Anyways, long ago and far away, and we're both happily married to other people a million miles down the road. But it was a good time and a good place. I moved to Edmonton to work with Tommy Banks. He had started a new record company. He wanted someone to be A&R, artist and repertoire, for it, plus wanted me to produce people, plus my own music. I found myself growing out of the sunshine pop stuff into the singer-songwriter, and then into something even more sophisticated. And I did some tracks with a guitarist by the name of Lenny Breau, who is a jazz legend. Those songs were a completely different side of me. And Bruce Sperling, who is now working in New York, got those songs to a songwriter by the name of George David Weiss. And George David Weiss had written What a Wonderful World for Louis Armstrong, Can't Help Falling in Love for Elvis Presley, The Lion Sleeps Tonight, That Sunday, That Summer for Nat King Cole, Oh, What It Seemed to Be for Frank Sinatra. Just a Hall of Fame songwriter. And he loved my material. So I ended up going down to London, Ontario, here, to teach at Fanshawe, and then at the same time starting to work with George David Weiss in New York City. I was 29 years old. That was the beginning of my 36-year career as a teacher.
So the door that opens up may not be one that you foresaw.
Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. There's all kind. The next door that opened up was while I was teaching at Fanshawe. I got an offer from Portrait Records in New York, which was part of Columbia. It was their boutique label. Burton Cummings was on it. Got an offer through George David Weiss, who I'd gone down to New York, and I'd done demos with him and the rest of it, and he went to Columbia with it, and they said, let's do a deal. And George said, come on down to New York City, record, let's get this career going. And I said no, because I'd been teaching at Fanshawe for 2 years. I'd found something that was more important to me than music, which was my family at that point. And so I said, Nope, sorry.
You then got involved in children's television.
Well, I got involved because I ended up getting divorced, ironically, and I wrote several songs to send to my son who was living in California at the time, to put them on cassette. And then all of a sudden there was, this kind of Canadian blossoming of children's music, and a local promoter here, Don Jones, was working with Mr. Dressup, and Mr. Dressup, Ernie Coombs, he played the little baby banjolele, which I've got over in the corner there, but he didn't do much music, and Don wanted some more music in the show, so he asked me to open up. So I opened up for him, and Ernie was having some record business problems then, which I helped him solve. And then they incorporated me into Ernie's act. I'd come out and sing a few songs, introduce him, then come back in the middle. Then we did a record together.
Along the way, you're teaching, you ended up writing a manual for people who were just getting into the music business. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
There's more money in selling the dream than there is in living the dream. Now stop and think about that. There's more money in selling the dream than in living it. So you want to be a singer? I'm going to record you. I'll sell you my studio time. I'll sell you my services as a producer. I'll sell you, rental on some equipment that you may want to use in the session. I'll introduce you to a friend of mine who does websites. They'll sell you a website, and they'll do all that. And so at the end of it all, you've got your song and your website and the rest of it, your dream, all right? And I've got money. And that's what the reality of the music industry has always been. Today it's just more so because there's less opportunity to make money, but more opportunity to spend it. That's the other point here. Are we talking about art? Or are we talking about fame? Because if you come to me and you say, I want to be famous, I say, set yourself on fire then. Really, set yourself on fire, get the publicity. But if you've got some music that you want to create and you want to do it from an artistic standpoint, I'm there. Because everyone I know who's successful has done it from an artistic standpoint and not from, I want to be famous. Keep doing what you do. Be who you are, and you'll be a happy person. And it doesn't matter whether one person likes it or 10 million. You're still doing what you should be doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Terry McManus's book is called Canadian Music Primer. It's available at terrymcmanus.com.
Up in the morning, I look out, it's raining, it always is.
Terry and I worked together at Fanshawe College for 4 years. Natalie Samotiak's parents are close friends. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.